Yo, what's up guys? I've been looking for a build on my hunter to consistently run when I do decide to do PvE on my hunter. This build gives me exactly what I was looking for, a build that doesn't rely on any weapon setup so I can optimize my loadout while having strong abilities. The only downside to this build is that you have the ability to damage yourself from the second explosion that happens after your knife detonates. The exotic of choice today is Caliban's Hand, and with that in mind, let's jump straight into the build. So for this build setup, we will be rocking Solar 3.0, and let's jump straight into that so we can see what we need to make this build work. For the super, we will be using Blade Rod. For the passive ability, we are going to be using Gambler's Dodge. Gambler's Dodge just to make sure that we are able to get our proximity knife back if we do not kill an enemy with our proximity knife. So the way it works in this build is that if you don't kill an enemy with your proximity knife, you will not get it back. And when that happens, that kind of messes up the flow of the build. So to get you back on track, we are going to be using Gambler's Dodge so you can refund your entire melee energy anytime you do dodge near an enemy. Movement ability, we are going to be using triple jump. Like I said in my previous videos, I've been raised on these jumps since the beginning of Destiny 2, so I can't see myself using any other jump, and that's the jump I currently use. For the melee ability, we are going to be using the proximity explosive knife. This is what makes the build different from the other builds, and it pairs well with Caliban's Hand. And why does it pair well with Caliban's Hand? Well, that's because your proximity knife scorches targets its damage with its explosions or ignites on final blows, and after you throw your proximity knife, you gain an increased melee regeneration until the knife explodes. Okay, so Caliban's Hand is just giving your knife the ability to scorch extra targets from the explosion it gives. For the grenade, we are going to be using our healing grenades just so we have a consistent way to heal ourselves back during the build, and we have some kind of healing in the build. For the aspects, we will use knock him down, and I did say you're going to be using Gambler's Dodge just in case you miss and don't get a final blow with your proximity knife. That's because with the solar aspect, knock him down while radiant, your final blows with your equipped throwing knife, it will fully refund your melee energy. So like I just said, if you do get a kill with your proximity throwing knife, then you will get the entire knife back. But if you do not get a kill, you won't get your knife back. So that's why we do use Gambler's Dodge in this build. For the second aspect, we are going to be using On Your Mark. The main reason why we're using On Your Mark is so that we do have 3 fragment slots. Like, let's be honest, we need these 3 fragment slots, and the extra increased weapon handling and reload speed for a short duration is nice, but we mainly use it for the 3 fragment slots. After the aspects, let's jump straight into the fragments. For the first fragment, we are going to be using Ember of Torches. So with Knock 'em Down, when you are radiant, you get a full refunded proximity knife. So we need to become radiant. That's why we're using Ember of Torches. And while we are radiant, we're going to be using Ember of Empyrean so that our proximity knife can now extend that duration of radiant. So anytime we do get a kill, it's going to extend the duration, and since we are radiant, it's going to refund our fully proximity knife. So those 3 things right there pair well together. Ember of Torches to make us radiant, Ember of Empyrean so we can extend the radiant, and then Knock him down so that while we are radiant, our proximity knife will get refunded 100%. After that, we do have Ember of Blistering so that every time we do get a kill with our proximity knife and scorch all the other targets and even cause them to ignite, those ignitions are going to grant us grenade energy so we have a way to consistently heal ourselves during the build. After that, we will have Ember of Wonder so that when we do ignite those enemies behind the target we do kill with our proximity knife, those ignitions as well as giving us grenade energy will also now grant an orb of power. But the main reason I did decide to pick up Ember of Wonder is so I can get the extra 10 resilience, so I can max out my resilience to tier 10. But getting an orb of power is pretty nice. The last thing we do have is Ember of Eruption, so that solar ignition that we are getting will now have an increased area of effect. So when you do defeat a target, this is where I say this is like the one problem I found in the build, is that you will have the ability to damage yourself because you're going to be running Ember of Eruption. Those ignitions are going to have an exponentially larger area of effect. Okay, and that's how we set up the subclass. With this subclass and the one exotic Caliban's Hand, you're pretty much set to run whatever else you want to run on this build. And what I mean by that is you're able to run whatever weapons you need to complete the content of choice of that day. After we do set up our subclass and we are running Caliban's Hand, I do optimize this build by using elemental mods. But if you don't have elemental mods, then this build is perfectly fine by just using Caliban's Hand and then the subclass Solar 3.0. Now to optimize it, let me jump straight into the builds. We are going to be using Melee Wellmaker. We're using melee Wellmaker because we are using a proximity knife, which is considered a melee, and when we do get a kill with our melee, we want to spawn elemental wells that match our subclass. And since we are on Solar 3.0, every time we do kill an enemy with our proximity knife, it's going to spawn a Solar Elemental Well. When we do spawn that Solar Elemental Well, we don't want to just spawn one, we want to spawn two. So that's why we're rocking Bountiful Well. So every time we do spawn one Elemental Well, it's going to spawn two Elemental Wells. Which ties in with the third thing that we're going to be using, which is Well of Life. Well of Life is going to grant us increased additional health regeneration. So this is how it ties in with us healing. And the reason why I say that is because you always need a way to heal during your build. So since we are getting a lot of kills with our knife, we need a way to consistently heal ourselves back just in case we do not have a grenade. So we are going to be picking up Well of Life, and you guys did put me onto that. I didn't know about it before, but a lot of you guys said that in my comments in my previous videos, and I did decide to pick it up because the healing is nice. Like once you stack Restoration and Well of Life, like you're healing back really strongly, and those two in combination with one another is really good. The next thing we do have is Caliban's Hand, and I do not have any mods on this except for I keep this exotic open, or this slot of armor piece open just for the armor mods of that season, so I can run Unstoppable or Anti-Barrier, whatever that content needs at the moment. So I keep that slot pretty much open. And then on my helmet I do have Seeking Wells, so just in case I can't get to those elemental mods in time, or if I can't see them because you're just throwing a knife and defeating a lot of enemies across the room, we want those elemental wells to track and come towards you. So that's why we're using elemental wells. But to really simplify this build down, you can just rock melee well maker and then Well of Life. So you are getting a way to heal yourself by just killing enemies with your melee. That pretty much wraps up the build for you guys. I hope you guys enjoy the build and use it when you guys are running your content. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.